Reality is intuited through the sound, not through the sight. See? So the definition of the Rishi or Rishi is the one who has access to that pool of sound. And in that sound, Rishi can recognize, literally recognize, patterns, melodies, notes of things to come. That's the definition of the seer. It's maybe a stream of sound. And once attention is given to that stream of sound, Rishi can begin to detect, sense into which sounds of this frothing, bubbling above the Planck scale are to become reality.
You have individuals acquiring assets, whether physical or metaphysical. Companies acquiring other companies, whether horizontal or vertical. Countries attempting to acquire other countries, or at least the individuals behind them. I wanted to know, beyond the obvious economic and strategic benefits, what the driving force really is here. Initially I thought it was the influence of ego and ignorance, but now that seems very surface level. And you mentioned the other day that everything is Shiva and nothing is separate. So in effect, acquisition is an illusion. And we have this intrinsic desire to own and expand. And like the case with the Aston Martin, whether you have it for bragging rights that you own it, it's still an experience. Or whether it's sitting in the garage and you look at it, that's an experience. Or whether you drive it in the mountains with the windows down, that's an experience. Is it this deep yearning for unity and progressive expansion for the fullness of the body of Shiva? Or is this just Shiva's default mode network and we're just marionettes in this Leela?
The teacher used to say, in the field of pure potentialities, everything is available. Something along these lines. In the field of pure potentiality, everything is available. And he used to add, happiness is available and misery is available. And suffering is available. It's a profound way, simply expressing profound wisdom in simple ways. You see, this understanding of this diversity and this multiplicity, all this is always at the needle sharp pinpoint of wherever the attention goes. Wherever the attention goes, and certain possibility is being brought forth. So we are set to discuss, let's say, how to consciously manifest, right? But at the very same time, this process of manifestation taking place at all times with extraordinary speed. So everything that what we experience, that what you kind of briefly gave, that like that a slice, that outline, is all because certain propensities have been followed and attention have fell on certain aspect that immediately has sprouted. The scientists, they talk about it, that bubbling universe just above the Planck scale. It's frothing. So all that level below is this level of the molten gold of pure potentialities, right? That, let's say, magma of consciousness. It's liquid. It's liquid. It's like gold as water. And as it froths, rises, it bubbles up into quadrillion, unimaginable number of variables. And some of them are being brought to the level of what we here experience as this reality. See? So everything is possible in consciousness. And this field of potentialities, this field of possibilities, is where things constantly spring forth. So the question here is when and where and how did it spring forth that we live this right now? How do we live this that there are Aston Martins and there are presidents and there are empires and there are people dying like flies? And how all this sits together, right? Is because some propensity, some attention went somewhere, and that all went into unstoppable process. It startled me many, many years ago when I was in my late teens, when someone who was temporarily in that position of a guide told me, "You see that airplane flying up there in the sky? What you see, in fact, is not airplane. You're seeing an idea that is brought to manifestation." And it was a startling example to me. True, isn't it? Like 200 years ago, there were no airplanes flying up in the sky. 100 years ago, maybe first of them started to be tested, right? Leonardo da Vinci killed a couple of men just to see if they can fly, right? Just push them off the hill of Fiesole. Great engineer. So something that is an idea then becomes a reality. And we take it for granted. We fly airplanes, we board planes, right? And it's part of our reality. So how all this is that at some point it froths as an idea, it froths as the possibility. And whatever that, out of this infinite myriad of possibilities, some, let's say, out of that froth, maybe few bubbles rise and become into something. That analogy of the quantum physics used. Otherwise, it's constantly like that, boiling, frothing up, rising. So, not sure exactly what you're asking, because the philosophy itself, right, all this is Shiva, is to make us fully aware of what is actually happening. And of course, these questions often being brought, particularly in the setting of the monistic, let's say, non-dual framework of understanding. Not unlike when people, faithful, fervent believers, ask, if there is God Almighty, how can there be this evil? How can there be this injustice, right? God is just. How can there be injustice? And the whole metaphysical, the whole theological conversation unfolds from there. This angle, that angle, trying to bring it all together, right? These key questions: is there free will or not? Is there evil? How all this sits together. So not sure exactly what you're asking, but if I sensed what you are asking, then what is of utmost importance is that where our attention falls. Because in that frothing, everything is an idea, everything. And whatever we carry is being formed in the infinitesimal way, as if it may be even the spider's web is a gross example, because it's so intricately, infinitely, intimately, and finally done at the subtle level, that out of all that, the fabric is being woven. So how our life proceeds. So in a way, to put it bluntly, what we live right now, we live someone else's ideas. We live someone else's thoughts, someone else's intentions, someone else's desires, those who were before us. You see? But our individual experience refuses that, refutes that, particularly in our Western setup. I'm bringing myself there. I'm not Western by bringing, by the way. But I've lived in the West long enough to speak this way. So in the Western thinking, in the Western way, which is pretty much a global affair, this is the understanding. Whereas in all native cultures, in all truly native civilizations, the understanding is never about what's happening right now. Eckhart Tolle will not happen in the native civilization. There's no place for him there. Because it's not important what's now. What's important always is constantly. This is why people had names that are very strange to our ears. See? Names of the natives that were different. The names themselves already carry the tension, the tense of the mythology. Something, see? Something which has the quality of an arrow that is already halfway in its flight. So this is what's happening in consciousness. So maybe if you want to give me, what is it that really it for you, what is it that you're sitting on and you want to have a clarity on? Because nothing is as it seems. Everything is in the process. It's constantly being renewed. It's constantly pulsing. It seems as if it's fixed. The dogs are barking every night, at a certain hour here. The buildings, when they're made out of brick and mortar, they have this solidity, right? Then we have this body, everything kind of like, and the world of relationships, memory, all that. And yet something else is going on. Something else. And this is where I point the attention. But tell me more. What is it that you want to know?
I definitely agree with precedence being very important, especially as it guides us forward. And a big part of my life is idea generation, like the molten gold. And you're right, only a few bubbles out of the million conversations or ideas materialize. As you go through the process and awaken, how do you make sure that whether it's the molten gold in the ideas or the execution of them is ultimately aligned with your Dharma and you are operating in full consciousness versus, just repeating what the previous person has done before you, while also paying homage to what's been done before, the precedents, but also having the appreciation and bringing the idea into this physical world as well, balancing both sides and ensuring that it's in ultimate alignment with yourself and the higher consciousness.
Mhm. See, already in the inquiry itself, even in the way you speak about that, there's energy. There is something. There's a frequency in that. In the way you chose words, you gave it form. See, but before you gave this form, there's something moved in you, right? Something that wants to express that. That's what's important. See? It doesn't matter. Like you and I can sit and we have that feeling there. That's something. And maybe I'm like destined to scramble on paying rent for the rest of my life, something like that. Just saying that as an example. But my consciousness can counter someone as wealthy as Elon Musk and Bezos multiplied by 10. You see? It doesn't matter what is the equity value in numbers. What values more is where my heart is. You see? The real battle is won at that level. Conversation, this, that, and talks, yes, rockets will be shouted, not shouted, yes, shouted. Shot into space, and it doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, it doesn't. What's important is where do we go as a humanity? That's what's important. So this is what you already spoke, is to me, if it comes from your mouth, that means it's coming from somewhere deeper. And where it comes from, you see, that's the most important. And then it's now taking shape. Okay, then maybe you would want to adjust that and revisit, give it another shape. But what's important is that something there is alive and propels you, moves you to bring that in terms of the inquiry. So that's first. That's first important acknowledgement. Every idea at the level that what we spoke today, there is this place, there is this particular, yes, place, we could say, where the vibration, the frequency is taking form. In Sanskrit, it's called Namarupa. Nama, name, rupa, form. It's something that is brought forth. Namarupa. It corresponds to the sight. It corresponds to the fire element. It corresponds to seeing with eyes closed. At that level, still, eyes are not even required. Eyes will come. See? So, even in a state of meditation, we can experience that. In a state of meditation, we can experience when form and sound, form and name merge. They merge. They are returned to the molten state of pure potentiality. And when that takes place, then we have touched the level, right? This is a true magic. It's not a trick. Pulling a rabbit out of the hat is a trick. Making something out of thin air is a trick. But it's not magic. But it is magical when we, by virtue of being conscious beings, can bring something to a molten state. And when we touch that, that's the mastery you're talking about. That's what you really want. From that place, reality can and will change. Changes come only from that level. They don't come from the level of surface level of conversation, dialogue. At some point, we all understand that and turn our back to the noisy chatter of the world. Doesn't matter how it looks. Doesn't matter how seriously it takes itself. It's nothing but a, in Shakespearean word, comedy. It's that. The only thing is, if it was just comedy, it would have been fine. But in our day and age, it seems to be tragicomedy. So like United Nations is a tragicomedy. Like every political system, every opposition is a tragicomedy. This is what it means, that, if you want to be this, you want to be that. Great religions are created, but the teachings are not followed. This is why I said, this is my pure insight, that Shakti moves into art always. Shakti moves into art. If Shakti cannot be alive in the teaching, it has to go somewhere. So it goes into the expression, in the artistic expression. So for that, to me, the greatest thing for me in religion is art. Because the spiritual teaching itself is hollow, is a shell. But the art is great. That's where it is alive. So that what arises, that what ego is to, even the question itself, that where does it come from? See? That place has to be cherished. It has energy, tremendous energy. It's very refined. And that place where all this is returned again, molten again. When it's completely indistinguishable. The sound is indistinguishable from the form. Form dissolves completely. If you can touch that level, you weave reality out of that. Reality is woven out of that. How it will manifest itself, in a sense of like, will I be able to bring something tangible into this world? Maybe yes. What if it wouldn't be tangible? How will I square it all? How is it all going to pan out? Well, again, if that level is touched and touched repeatedly, then there will not an iota of fear. You see? Because it doesn't work from that level. At the logistical level, at the level of rational thinking that yes, this, that needs to be done. But something else is happening. Something else. You were the one who asked the question, right? At the online, right? The gathering we had. So that what you asked, you see, I would say, will reveal itself. Who knows, maybe in this particular immersion. Clear like that. See? But it's not going to be revealed in a form, I'm doing this, but it's not like you're going, maybe, but it's not so much in terms of how you will be able to see it. Maybe a little tweak is required here. They say if you cannot imagine it, then you cannot bring it forth to manifestation. Also, one cannot imagine what already doesn't exist. It's another reality. This, because what comes into visual form already subjected to that what already in existence. The definition and the translation of the word Sanskrit term rishi or she is an English mistranslation. Seer, right? That's how it will be translated. At least in most cases, seer or Maharishi, great seer. Isn't it? Huh? No? Seer of reality. There are seers of reality. Rishi. But the Sanskrit term Rishi doesn't stand for seeing at all. It actually stands for hearing. Hearing. So reality is heard. Reality is heard. Reality is intuited through the sound, not through the sight. See? So the definition of the Rishi or Rishi is the one who has access to that pool of sound. And in that sound, Rishi can recognize, literally recognize, patterns, melodies, notes of things to come. That's the definition of the seer. It's maybe a stream of sound. And once attention is given to that stream of sound, Rishi can begin to detect, sense into which sounds of this frothing, bubbling above the Planck scale are to become reality.